The View's Sonny Hostin says she's worried about Sean Diddy Combs' male majority jury in his sex trafficking trial. She's concerned they won't recognise the classic victim grooming by Combs as his former girlfriend Cassie Ventura takes the stand. Let's take a look.
Now, what I saw as a former sex crimes prosecutor is classic victim, survivor, sexual grooming, right? He started pushing her boundaries and trauma bonded. But in watching the jury, I also saw some of the jurors just not understanding how she didn't just leave. And so I think that in order for the prosecution to prove this case, and it's a heavily male jury, there are 12 men and about 8 women.
Meanwhile, the former CEO of Death Row Records, Suge Knight, who I had no idea who that was until Niall just told me, made some shocking predictions about the trial. He thinks President Trump could pardon Diddy if convicted. He made the remarks from prison on News Nation's Cuomo. Let's watch.
Puffy's going to be all right and have a fair shot at it because Puffy he's not a dummy. And I'm quite sure somebody's going to talk to those jurors and convince one or two of them, and that's all he needs is one. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a real exciting situation, but I think he's going to be all right.
As a reminder, Combs was indicted in the fall of last year on charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. His trial officially began May 12th in downtown Manhattan. It's expected to last 8 weeks in all. Ventura's testimony has been the focus of the trial so far, as she outlines the abuse she says she endured during their decades-long relationship.
So this is one of those stories where you get to flex your cultural
hip-hop knowledge,
which vastly exceeds mine. Obviously, I know who Sean P. Diddy Combs is, and we've been following this trial. I don't know, Sonny was, per usual, very off-base to me there. I just don't vibe with her comments. I think the jury is perfectly able, and also it's okay, 12 men and 8, it's not so lopsided.
Right.
Also, you know, the prosecutor, they have to prove their case. They have to, you know, prove that this was willful abuse and, you know, and that it was not consensual and all of that. They've introduced a lot of compelling evidence. To my mind, what sticks out to me is the documented proof of him, you know, not just her being with him and something going wrong, but him, you know, barging into her own house and threatening her. That was corroborated. There was some video footage I was watching just this morning of him attacking this guy in a hallway. There's good, solid, irrefutable evidence of real violent, bad behavior by him being presented that takes it out of the realm to me of he said, she said, or, well, you know, she says it's not consensual, but she came over and she agreed to do all these things. You know, she willfully took the kinds of defenses he could make. I think we're seeing some evidence that really cuts against that, and I, you know, leave it to the jury to decide what to make of it. But you know, we're seeing it, and it speaks for itself.
Yeah, the video that I think is perhaps the most sort of famous or infamous element in all of this is the video in the hotel where he is dragging Cassie Ventura and I mean, it's pretty gross violence, and there's no, you know, there's no even slight justification for it. Now, I have not read the statute. I mean, obviously, sex trafficking is one of the charges he faces. Sonny Hostin's point, I think, is that Cassie Ventura did stay in a relationship with Sean Combs for a long period of time. And I guess Sonny's point is, well, will men be more likely to think that that means Cassie consented to this behavior? I'm not all that sure that they will. I mean, Cassie Ventura has testified in some detail about physical abuse beyond the video that I'm just talking about, and the idea that she was intimidated from leaving, not only by Sean Combs's status or wealth, but by the fact that he apparently or allegedly said that he would release very embarrassing sexual videos of her if she were to go.
It's blackmail.
So exactly. So that I mean, you know, the evidence that we have seen certainly, to my mind, proves Sean Combs a terrible person. Yes, he of course is having his time in court right now. Of course, he has the right to try to push back on the charges against him, obviously. But I mean, it's pretty grim evidence.
Right, because we're seeing evidence being presented of violence, not just, again, some kind of sexual circumstance where you say it wasn't consensual, but I say it was, and who knows.
It's not really he said, she said
right.
in relation to the violence.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I remember covering cases or reading cases, again, you know, Title IX campus ones where some long relationship and you know, the alleged victim said, well, you know, over the course of this relationship, you know, we had consensual sex, you know, 20 times, but time number 14 was non-consensual, and you know, that's why I'm filing this complaint. And I'm like, well, barring any other evidence of that, I wouldn't do anything with that. There were 13 prior and 7 subsequent, and there was no. But again, this is not that, because we're seeing actual video evidence and corroboration of violence,
right.
So which lends a lot of credibility to what she's saying.
Right, and to the Sonny Hostin point, the weight of that evidence seems to me so far likely to persuade any fair-minded person that this was a coercive relationship. I mean, obviously we're two men sitting here talking about it, but I don't think that men are so blind to notions of coercion, or certainly notions of blatant violence, that they go, oh, well, she stayed in the relationship. Yeah. I mean, that doesn't seem to
Now, charging it as sex trafficking is kind of an interesting thing, and I do have, and actually one of my colleagues at Reason Magazine, Elizabeth Nolan Brown, who's been on the show a couple times, who writes a lot about sex trafficking and how the criminal justice system and police prosecutors have used that as a catch-all term, actually mostly to pursue consensual prostitution or sex work, which we as libertarians don't really even think should be illegal in the first place. As she argues that the way it is charged tends to actually hurt or assume victimhood in some cases for people who do not even view themselves as victims. We kind of, as a society, have a very misguided notion of even what sex trafficking is, because there's a lot of... have you seen these? Have you traveled lately in airports now? They're everywhere. There's these signs saying, watch out for human trafficking.
Sure.
There's some young person pictured, and you're supposed to be looking out for it. That's trying to introduce some idea that, like, people are being grabbed at airports and malls and being sex trafficked kids. That never happens. There are almost zero circumstances of that. People are forced into coercive work and coercive sex work, not by random strangers who grab them. Almost virtually always, it's by someone they knew, by a family member, friend, some trusted parental figure. Total random stranger grabbing you, chaining you to a radiator. I'm not saying it's never happened, but statistically it's almost zero. So to be warning people that they got to be on guard for that kind of thing is just not where the real problem is in this category of crime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about the specifics or the statistics about that. Elizabeth, I think, is a very good journalist, and I'm sure she's made strong points there. In relation to Suge Knight and this idea that Trump will pardon Combs even if he is convicted, I'm not really sure what he's basing that on. It appears to be, I think, the idea that Trump is somehow well disposed toward famous people, or there is a reference that Knight made to another music executive who was granted clemency by Trump. But I mean, this idea that, oh well, Trump would obviously pardon him. I don't even mean this as an anti-Trump point. I just don't know where that's coming from.
Has Diddy
really
been saying that he's a victim of the deep state, the same deep state that got our glorious president Donald Trump? If he's going for the Trump pardon, that's the angle to start in on.
Following the Eric Adams, Bob Menendez footsteps, and see if that works for him.
Yeah, we'll see.
We shall.
All right, Congress members asleep at the wheel, literally asleep. We'll discuss more Rising right after this.